Welcome to another fascinating lecture from Dr. Thor Templar. Today I'm going to cover a very important law of magic. Few people seem to understand the ritual process in general, and there are many different aspects of doing rituals that I will cover, and one of them that few people understand is the law that states magic will not create a problem that is greater than the one you have. So if you're trying to manifest something that you desire in a very common low-level human aspect, which is how we all work out of, and this is going to be detrimental to you, magic will not manifest it. You think you want it, you think that it is good for you, but pretty much anybody from the outside, and particularly the intelligence of the magic energy, will not allow it to be manifested because it will create a greater problem than you are trying to solve. So magic will not manifest a greater problem than you are trying to solve. Now, of course, that makes sense to you. You look at it and you say, well, that's interesting. Well, I certainly wouldn't want that, but you do want that. Most people, in many situations, and it can be very straightforward or not straightforward, suppose you want a particular job and you do a lot of magical rituals to get that job, and for some reason or another it isn't manifested for you. Well, ultimately, if you are an empowered magician, an empowered sorcerer, it should have worked out for you. You should have gotten an opportunity. Now, why didn't it manifest? Well, there could be many reasons to that. But when we get past the technicalities of things, or whether you did the rituals right, or whether the magic was strong enough, when we get past all that, it really comes down to the fact of maybe it wasn't right for you. And people don't understand this law. And they don't understand the fact that magical energies are highly intelligent. There are spirits connected to it, and intelligences or consciousnesses attached to it that know not only how to manifest for you, but also whether to manifest at all for you. Now, this goes along with the, what is called straight line manifestations. You want a job, and you do particular practices to get that job, and you want it to go in there, here I am, and get hired. Well, in some instances that works, but in general we find that because there are blockages of one way or another, or because you may not be as qualified, or for one reason or another, the straight line approach generally doesn't work for people. If it did, you just put your application in, send your resume, and you would be hired. You wouldn't need magic. That would straight line about. So generally, if you want to be picked over many other candidates, if you want to be seen as something special, even if you're less qualified, you need to empower your process there through the use of magic. And when you do that and it fails, you say, well, the magic failed. Well, maybe the magic didn't fail at all. Maybe that was a very bad position. It may look good because you're unemployed, or maybe it was a job with a much greater salary. But it could be in a position that you would be in a terrible situation, that you would get fired, have a black mark on your record because it was such a terrible place to work. There may be all sorts of problems in a particular industry that is not advisable or good for you to particularly get in that position, even if the numbers, meaning the salary or even location, is such a great thing to achieve for you. It may not be. It may not be. The extra money may not be worth it. It may be in an industry that is collapsing. There could be 100 reasons why it is best for you not to get that job or anything else you are seeking. This is extremely, extremely true when it comes to relationships. Most people, particularly those using magical means, usually tend to seek out people that are not good for them, or to return lost loves that really shouldn't be returned at all, or to try and get someone to commit in a relationship that is not worth having commit. That doesn't commit, and it doesn't commit for a reason. These are not good people. You shouldn't be with them. You need to move on. Magic will not manifest negative relationships that will cause you hell in the future. And people think a relationship will be wonderful until you're stuck with that person 24/7, year after year. And then you'll learn what true hell is all about. So it's very important to understand there are energies involved, spirits involved, a consciousness energy, which is commonly metaphysically labeled as spirits. We like to call them intelligent consciousness, that are in control of these things, which comes from the inner magical being, often called your higher and better self, who really know what's best for you, not just in the short run, gimme, 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 I want to be with that person, I've been with that person, I'm some reason attracted to them, I've known them for a long, there's 100 reasons why people get into relationships, and usually they're all bad. And then people want to further fight to keep a bad relationships to their own personal destruction, instead of moving on and finding the many other, literally billions of people. There's 8 billion people on this planet. Roughly 4 billion are the other sex. So, to force these issues yourself, thinking in a very primitive, straight line fashion of this is good for you, basically being told to you by your toxic evil mind, is not going to happen through a process that is controlled by your higher consciousness, otherwise known as the inner magical being, which controls these manifestations and most everything in your life, as well as the activation of your occult power centers to achieve all these things. Now, often these things are not seen in life. Often these are disregarded as magical failures or problems in your life, and you look at them and say, well, this is just bad, and I'll have to look somewhere else. And I've done this in my life many times as well. And then I look back several years later, and if I did that, if I was there doing this, I would be in deep trouble today. I would have all sorts of extra problems. I may even be dead if I was in that particular environment around those toxic people. So, while you don't have, 20/20 vision, and we talk about hindsight, of course, being perfect, and of course all these things are nice to know, but of course are not within your general grasps, especially at lower level occultism, even though by using certain divination methods you can figure these things out as well. But even with those, your inner magical being determines ultimately what's best for you. And if you look in the long run, you will find out that this is true. Shockingly true. And that apparent negative things that happen to you, potential even hardships, were done and happened to you so that it would push you in a particular direction so that you would have long-term success. And this cannot be underestimated in any fashion whatsoever. It's really important to understand this concept and look at that in your life in general. This instant gratification, short way of looking at life, presents people with all sorts of problems which can overwhelm and cripple them forever. Rushing into a bad relationship, bringing back bad people who've proven they're bad, who are not interested in you and do not love you, and then you try to somehow force them together, is a short way to self-destruction and living in hell. Magic will not create that. And it doesn't matter whether you use positive or so-called negative entities. Demons don't create long-term lasting results or not. Just plain and simple. If you use a demon who forces an issue, whatever results are achieved from that will be very, very short term, and generally we end up making your problem worse by forcing and using negative entities like that step in and force issues. But if you're using positive magic based out of your higher consciousness and not using such toxic energies which infect you on all sorts of levels, it will not manifest, period. It's very, very important to understand that. So you can't look at anything necessarily as a failure. If you particularly were working on a particular relationship and that didn't work out, well, you'll find out that in the future, you'll find a better relationship. And of course, you look at things today as, oh, that's a terrible failure, I really wanted that, but ultimately, that's not positive for you and it will not be manifested. The same thing with almost anything you're trying to manifest, and that includes success, jobs, etc. If you get into the wrong job and your life becomes a living hell, and you think you're going into maybe a job that's going to pay you more salary, and that salary never happens, or it only lasts for a period of time, or there's problems within the company, all these things can happen very easily. That's not successful magic. Well, I got the job. Isn't that successful? Not if the job is hell. So that's not a successful ritual, and that's really not what you were asking for. So understanding that very important law that magic will not manifest a problem greater than the one you are trying to solve is very important to understand. And this is very blatant when it comes into relationships where people want to draw in negative people. These rarely work, and when they're forced through either by a practitioner or by the person themselves who use large amounts of just raw energy and psychic powers and formula energies to force the issue on a person that can manifest for very short periods of time, you creating huge problems for yourself. But even that is rare, because those instances of actually compelling people is a rare situation and never lasts for a very long period of time. So you're using raw push-through energy, and if these do work through sheer force, they will not, those energies do not last or make lasting changes. So this is a kind of a safety valve of magic in general. So you don't go around manifesting from a very low consciousness, and that's where all people are coming from. I mean, very few people have wisdom. They're using magic to make their life better and empower it, and that certainly is a positive way to go. But, you don't really understand and see the bigger picture often. You have blinders on. You want this person, you want this job, you want whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. And regardless of whether it's good or you think it's good or it's good for you, but you don't really know all the other potential problems that are really hidden in many ways from you. But your inner magical being does, and it will block that. So it's very important to understand that concept in life. And that you are not going to get results in a negative area. And if you work on something for a period of time and something doesn't work, you are being told, don't do this. Move on. Try something else. Try to get a better job. Try to find a different person. It isn't the fact that the magic has failed. In a lot of ways, the magic has worked. It's even blocking you from causing yourself greater problems. So even a failure is really a success. But you don't see that. You just see the position where this is a perfect person for you in your mind. You think that's it until you live with them. And this is the perfect job. You think that until you work there. Then what do? What happens when you have that baby and you have that kid to take care of and you have a hellacious relationship? What happens if you get into a business that starts to crumble and you're stuck in an industry, and then what do? But see, you only thought with your basic primitive mind, your knee-jerk mind that tells you, grab this, grab that, this is what's best for me, that's a big paycheck, that's a attractive person. It doesn't add up. Your life will be made much worse if you got involved in those situations. And magic will not facilitate that, plain and simple. And that's very important for those people doing rituals, having rituals done for them, to understand this concept and learn it well. So with that, there is no reality until the occult scientist creates it. Question everything, believe nothing, and let the guild be your guide.